So I'm going to talk about comparative advantage versus absolute advantage. Okay, comparative advantage versus absolute advantage, and we're going to look at it a couple different ways. It's kind of the basis for why countries trade and why we specialize in making one good over another. I've got other videos kind of talking about it in some basic terms, in terms of specialization and why. But I want to sort of back up and just give you another sort of a background example or sort of a vague example of it. So once we start doing more specific math part of it, it will make more sense. Okay, so there are some countries, and the United States is one of them, that can kind of outproduce most countries at everything. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't trade. And it doesn't even need to be America with another country. It can just be regional parts of America, right? There are parts of our country that are regionally very good at making things. We are regionally good at making, coal in Kentucky, and we are regionally good in Silicon Valley at producing technological innovations, right? We have regional specializations. And one of the reasons we're able to do that is because we use an economic theory called comparative advantage. It was established by David Ricardo a couple hundred years ago. And it has a pretty basic underlying theme to it, is essentially you want to reduce your opportunity cost. So the more you can reduce your opportunity cost, the less you're giving up to do something, the better, right? The more you have to give up, the less advantage you're gaining. But if you can specialize in making something where the opportunity cost of doing that is very low, then you can specialize in doing that, and another country can specialize in doing what they're giving up the least to do. That's what comparative advantage is. It's about finding the opportunity cost, and whoever has the lowest opportunity cost to produce something will specialize in making that, okay? And I'm not going to work out the math for you, but I'm going to show you what I mean, and then the other videos I'll work out the math and you can sort of see how that works. Before you get freaked out also when you start seeing some of those math parts, for whatever reason, I don't know why, this comparative advantage, these models, are some of the hardest things for kids to grasp. So if you're like, oh my gosh, this is just like the second idea or second topic we're talking about in AP, and all of a sudden I don't understand it. It's only the second topic. Don't freak out about it. Plenty of kids do. There are some kids who just it takes a while to get through it. And I will say, when I first started teaching this, I was really bad at teaching it, because there are some things that you look at and you're like, okay, I got it. And there are some things you look at and you can never get it. And we've all got that, right? We've all experienced that. For this, I never understood how kids didn't get it, so I was really bad at teaching it. I was just like, it's the right answer. And I would show them something up here, and I'd be like, all right, what's the answer? And they'd be like, I don't know. And I'm like, it's 1.2, how are you so stupid? And I didn't understand why they didn't get it. So we created some models as ways to kind of go through this. We can get it right every time. And it's okay if you understand it. We can go over it and over it and over it. And this is part of micro and macro, right? So the way I'm teaching you now, I'm going to teach you on purpose this way, so you can apply more easily when we get to macro also. It's kind of a universal thing. In micro, it's universal just in terms of trade and opportunity cost, but in macro, it's universal in the sense that when we do global trade and international commerce, it's the same theory. So essentially, there are two types of comparative advantage questions we're going to look at. Let's look at this real quick. We have two countries. We have England and we have Russia. Everybody can see that, right? England and Russia. And let's say they're going to make two goods. They can make either tea or they can make cookies, okay? And what we're saying here, we're going to call this an output question. We're going to do more of these as time goes on. An output question, in this case, is the amount produced in 1 hour. So how much can we produce, or how much output, all right, in 1 hour? So you can see England can produce 5 teas in an hour, and Russia can only produce 2 teas. And England can produce 6 units of cookies, where Russia can only produce 3 units of cookies in an hour. So in this case, you can say that England has the absolute advantage in tea and in cookies. England can literally just produce more, okay? Russia does not have an absolute advantage in any of them. But that doesn't mean they can't actually trade. Because what we're going to see, and what the other videos will show, is that by figuring out who actually has the lowest opportunity cost, that country will specialize in whichever good, tea or cookies, they have the lowest opportunity cost. And the other country will specialize in the other good. And that will allow these countries to trade. That will allow these countries to specialize, okay? And that is the basis of comparative advantage. And again, they have absolute advantage in both tea and cookies, but that doesn't mean they can't trade. The theory of comparative advantage by lowering opportunity costs. That's what these videos upcoming are going to be about, and I want you to see that. We also have what we call input questions. An input question is where we're looking at how much input goes into the production of a good. Let's back up a second. You can see here we're producing 5 and 6. So you can see 5 teas and 6 cookies. The bigger number is better because we're producing more stuff. With an input question, we've got England and Russia again. We've got tea and cookies again. In this case, in an input question, the lower numbers are better. The lower numbers are more efficient. The lower numbers are wanted. So, for example, the amount of hours needed to produce 1 unit of goods. Well, if England, it only takes 1 hour to produce a unit of tea, and it takes Russia 3 hours to produce a unit of tea, you can see that the inputs that go into making tea are England has an advantage, and they can produce them more, right? Same thing with cookies. England only takes 2 hours to make a unit of cookies, and Russia makes 4 hours to make a unit of cookies. And so England has an absolute advantage in both of these because, you know, they're using fewer resources to make this. That doesn't mean they can't trade. We just have to figure out who has the lower opportunity cost. So again, the lowering your opportunity cost works in input or in output questions. We just do them a little bit differently, but the whole model for trade is finding out who produces what relative to producing another good. And by finding the lowest opportunity cost between these countries, the countries can specialize in whatever they give up the least to make. Okay? So watch these other videos, look at some of the background videos, look at all these things, and then I'll start doing the math. And it's okay if you have questions. It's fine. Ask all the questions you want. I can do a million. I can do these all day, right? Until you guys feel comfortable. And then once you feel comfortable doing it, I'll put it into a model and you can actually see. The long part of this is that eventually, well, the reason why we do this, let's say this is tea and let's say these are cookies, right? And let's say this is Russia. The whole purpose behind trade is so actually we can expand our production possibilities curve and actually produce more by moving our resources to more efficient places. I'll give you a real basic example in terms of using your resources more efficiently. Okay, let's say that you want to be a computer engineer. Let's say you're a great computer engineer, one of the best software engineers in the country, and you want to live in Lawrenceburg. Okay, now you'll find jobs and you'll make some good money. But if you want to use your resources as best as possible, you need to go somewhere where you can use those resources, right? Okay, so you might need to go to San Francisco, or you might need to go to Silicon Valley to use those resources efficiently as possible. Okay, if you are if you are an incredible, I don't know, if the thing you do greatest is you play the piano, you're a piano virtuoso, you're incredible, you're one of the best players in the world, but you spend most of your days, teaching 4-year-olds, chopsticks. That's not the best use of your resources, right? We are not getting out of people what we can get out of people, and so you need to go do something else. So essentially what's happening is countries can use their resources and move their resources around so we can actually produce more than we could have otherwise. That's the whole purpose behind comparative advantage.